Hi, good morning and welcome to Team Woolly Sheep Reviews. I hope you liked my last video. I have had a bit of interest in this particular plane that was featured in the video. It was my Vulcan. It's very light, it's made of depron. Depron, what is depron? Good question. Depron is a foam board that is designed to go under laminate or wood flooring. Here, as you can see, Avro Vulcan. What I did is I cut the ribs like so. Then I used this as a template to mark the depron foam and cut them out with a simple box cutter. The foam is quite fragile. It's not as robust as EPO foam and EPP foam. It does chip and scratch and dent, so you've got to be a little bit more careful. But to see a model that you've made fly, it is quite inspiring to actually make something and then see it fly so well. Try it, do it, build yourself one. You'll enjoy it. Like I said, what you want to do, there's no hard and fast rules. Make it as you want it, make it yours. I have. Make another one. Make a ducted fan one. I have 2 ducted fans, big batteries in it. I do recommend the electric ducted fan. That was really nice, but be mindful is without the big motor hanging on the back, you don't need so much nose weight. That's an extra bonus, so bear that in mind, because you're not building a nose section to take the battery, so that's something to be mindful of. Now this was an adaptation of one of my earlier Vulcans, which is with a pusher prop. I'll put a link below. I've got a website called Depron Designs where I've explained how I built this and what it's all about and where the centre gravity marks are, which I haven't got on this one. The question is, what have I done there? How have I done this? Well, when I said you can bend the foam, you'll see that I've bent this and manipulated this so I've got a bit of a curve, and then you can sand it. You can cut these little ribs and use them for support. You can use them very much like balsa wood, but what they normally say is whatever the guidance, if you're following a balsa wood plan, then double it in depron. So if it's a 3mm balsa, then make it 6mm depron, and it's roughly the same sort of strength, but this is lighter and it is handy. Comes in grey or white. But it is fragile, like balsa. It will crack and snap and break, so you have to be careful with it. There is techniques for bending it, and if you don't follow the techniques, it'll snap. So just to be warned. Right, so as you can see, I've shaped and sculpted to make a lid. That it can be a little bit potchy, but it's worth doing and to finish it off nice. Now I shall show you inside. Looks very, very elegant with some wood. What I've done is I've supported, because this was a little bit flexible, you could get cracks down there. I've put some either carbon fibre or these are fiberglass rods. And the idea of the fiberglass rods is to give it a little bit of a structural support on the nose, so if I do come down a bit on the nose and take an impact there, it's not going to break off, and then I'm back to fixing things. The wood that you can see inside there are Venetian blind slats from IKEA, of all places. I don't know whether you can see behind. I have some blinds, and these are the spare slats. Don't ask me what wood it is, but when you think these slats, they've been in my shed now for quite a while. They're not warped, they stay quite rigid, and they're quite strong. So they're like a single piece of if you think of a plywood, there's probably different layers of this type wood. But anyway, whether it's beech, who knows. But anyway, this is a Venetian slat, and I quite often carve them and make the inserts to go inside. So what's in there? You can see my receiver. On this particular one is the speed controller. Speed controller sits there. I've extended the wires and taken longer cables out to the back. So I brought the speed controller in here. On this particular one, I think is a 55 amp Turnigy thrust speed controller. Now the battery obviously goes up there. Now this was sized for a 2200 battery, and I later found that the 2200 didn't give me a great deal of flying time. So on my later models, I made sure that they take a 3300 or a 3 amp battery, ideally 4S. So this was, like I said, this was the second one I built. So there was a few little refinements in there. Like I said, I put some of this wood in there to give it some extra support. And on the underside, this is a plastic bit of perspex plate which I cut to give me a bit of strength so they aren't poking holes. And of course, because you're throwing it, I put a bit of a skid. This is basically a bit of balsa which I've shaped to put on there to get, and I've put a plastic skid so when it lands it's hitting this and not the nose. So and that's taking the support in there. On the back I put another skid there. I allowed the holes through, and the idea of the holes is to let some air through to cool the electronics. Might as well. But as you can see, the back end there, all the cables for the servos going through there. I've left them loose so I can actually remove the servo and pull them out and pull new cables in if need be. So the receiver's put on that side. The ESC is on this side. The battery's going to go up the nose and give me help with the nose weight. They did need a fair bit of nose weight. If I take this nose cone off, I'll take the nose cone off. While I'm doing this, have a look at some of the pictures showing it without the top cover on. That might be worth having a look at. Right, as you can see, that was just a spinner. 70mm, 50mm. That was a spinner. And as you can see, there's a fair bit. These are the weight strips that they balance your car tyres with. So I've added quite a few there, and a bit of foam to stop them rattling about if they can keep them from coming loose. But in there they're 5, so that's 5, 10, 130 grams. 130 grams, quite a lot of weight. You know, that's a considerable amount of nose weight. And all that to get the centre of gravity. Even with the battery shoved up the spout, it still needed extra nose weight. So after building this, I thought, what about an electric ducted fan? So I built another one, and this was the result. And what I've done is the same. I've constructed a nice cover, so it's worth spending some time building this. This is a bit of perspex. I put it on to give me a little bit of extra tracking, and to be honest, it finishes it off. It does actually track very nice, but I was conscious that it was only the one fin, the one stabilizer on the top, and I thought that is going to be quite helpful. So as you can see, it's quite a sizable chunk. Now what have I done on the inside? Now look at the size on that. You can see on the back section is the fan. I have cut these holes to get as much air. As you can see, these are a lot bigger, to get as much air as I possibly can. What you need to do is, whatever the diameter of your fan, this was 64, 60, I'm not sure. And I'm running a 55 amp speed controller, so that'll give me a burst of about 60 amps. Just big enough to run this. Runs it quite comfortably. It's not meant to be screaming full power constantly. otherwise you'll have no batteries left. So anyway, this is the fan, and once again you can see the wood that I've used to veneer the foam to give it a little bit of extra strength. I have the receiver mounted at the more of the front section. I've got a beck there which is powering the 5V rather than using that. If anything's going to burn out, it's going to be that. What I don't want is that to burn out because I'm drawing too much current in the fan, and then I got no controls and watch it crash and burn. No, don't like that. So what I've done is put a separate beck in it to run the servos. So a bit of veneer in there, carbon fibre tubes doing the same thing, supporting this nose section. I've used the wood, but as you can see, it's a different. I haven't got foam. I've used plastic. This was actually a water bottle, plastic water bottle, painted the inside so the outside looks nice and shiny because it's plastic, so the paint's not going to chip, and just finishes it quite nice. So I built a structure in there of bits of ply and balsa, whatever, to give me a solid nose, reinforced it with some carbon fibre rods, and then sleeved it with this tube. How you do is up to you. You've got to make it look like a plane at the end of the day. When it's actually flying, obviously the plane is taking the weight on there. But what I noticed, because I didn't have a structure going through apart from this bridging point here, is that there was a lot of flex on this back end. So because of that flex, it was clamping onto the fan motor, and because it was a plastic shrouded motor, it was causing the fans to so if I did a sharp turn, it would have crushed that slightly with the G-forces, and then actually stopped the fan motor. So I thought, I'm not going to risk that happening, so I bought, this was a Dr. Mad Thrust fan unit. I said it's a 69mm fan, or 68mm thereabout. Anyway, get what you can get. If next build I'll be using a 70mm guaranteed. And basically I formed a piece of aluminium brace and strapped it in here, and I got a bit of extra supporting foam and that in there to give me a strong bridge between the two wings, so that there's when it's flexing, it's taking away the flex. There is no flex. So rather than risk doing a tight turn and it crushing onto the motor, I've used that as a bridging point to stop it happening and give it actual support. So it's a bit of aluminium, bit heavier gauge than what you would have expected, but it's 2-3mm aluminium. It's quite and it's shaped nicely, works perfectly, and it's nice and rigid. So that is inside the radio tray. Right, a couple of things to point out. I have pinned in the XT60 plug just to make life easier. The battery sits in there. What I did find is, because this is a lot lighter than the propeller driven one, and I haven't got the weight of a motor hanging on the back, the battery didn't need to go so far forward. So I found the battery didn't actually need to go in the nose, so I created this nice caddy for the battery to go in, and it doesn't go in there. It actually stops flush there and actually fits in there perfectly. So that was a bonus. When it's coming into land, then there's no weight in that front end, so if the battery is back there, so that is quite a bonus. Like I said, this thing flies really nice, and I do recommend it. But like I said, there's no plans for this. This was an off-plan design that I sort of manipulated the original plans to suit this. I made these holes bigger because my friend's always complaining that they pinch his fingers, so I made it bigger, and I made a little plastic ridge there, and I put some carbon fibre pegs in there just so it don't snap off easy, and made that. I've got these wing skids which are slightly higher than that because I want them to take it, and what I've done, I've cut these perspex to give them a pad, so it's like a foot for it to take the impact, because obviously if these were just stuck on the foam, first landing they get ripped out. So, but to rip that pad off the foam will take a lot more force. So a little bit of thought, same there and same there, so that fingernails are not digging into the foam. As you can see, that is the center of gravity marker points. Now, as a guide, they always go off that front section here, so the measurements are always off this, the front, the lead. There's the leading edge, but this is the front, the root, the whatever. This is where the nose cone actually starts. So in the measurements, and this particular one, so 260 millimeters to 265 millimeters is the center of gravity from this part, not the nose tip, because that could vary from there. If you want to go back from that back section, it's going to be 300, 330, 333 from that back section. So, some wing skids on the end to just protect the tips of the wings a little bit better. If it comes down and it catches the ground, obviously it's going to hopefully land on these first, and if it catches the skids, it'll just spin around. I've blown this a few times now, and this, you can see there's bits of mud and whatever, but there's no damage. Alright, as you can see, made out of a bottle, painted on the inside, so you get that nice finish. And as you can see, being a bit creative with a bit of wood. You can see the carbon fibre rods there. Slightly smaller nose cone on this one because I wanted it to come out to the top of the pop bottle. As you can see, made a shape. Used that wood, whatever you got, to give it support. So the carbon fibre rods are there. I've also used my epoxy resin, so the carbon fibre rods go back to here somewhere. So I've got all this wooden deck that's giving it support going out. So that is quite strong there. It takes some breaking, and that is basically it. That was a nice finish. It was a lot easier than bending depron to that shape. While I'm putting it back together, have a look at the photographs. Right, one thing to point out, that was, like I said, handy, but be conscious that when this is on, you want to direct the airflow. And what I've actually done is I've notched the vertical stabilizer, so it actually sits into the vertical stabilizer, so it's a little bit more aerodynamic and looks nice. A couple of marks, and what I've done is just fill them in with a bit of decorator's cork, and one day I'll give it a little bit of coat of paint. This paint, by the way, it was a white primer, and it was a water-based primer, so it sticks to the foam, doesn't melt the foam. Be very careful, because any solvents, it'll melt. You'll never guess what that is. This is plastic. It's called a thrust tube, and the idea is it's slightly tapered in, and what it does is as it pressurizes with the volume of air coming out, rather than just being straight out, it pressurizes it because it's slightly tapered in. It's higher pressure inside the tube than, and then this, that's a load of crap. I'm talking crap. Anyway, you need a thrust tube, and the thrust tube needs to be slightly convected in to give you a pressurized thrust, or something like that. And what have I used? With our local takeaways, they provide these little pots, and these little pots for dips. So what I've done, I've used my Dremel and I've cut off the end, and that gives you a nice thrust tube. Normally throw them away or recycle them. So that is the Avro Vulcan. Like I said, I put a link to the Depron Designs page where you can download the plans and build your own. I have an FPV version. Which is what this is actually the first one I built. So when I broke it, I made the nose cone bigger. Not only did I make it bigger, I made it with the plastic, so it looks nicer. But because it was bigger and it was heavier, it then needed a bigger motor. Because it's a bigger motor, it needed more nose weight. But I did add a bigger battery, so by making it to take the bigger battery, meant I could put a bigger motor on the back to maintain the centre of gravity. Add a little bit of a wag, so I added some extra vertical stabilisation on the wingtips. This one I had a centre rib all the way through of balsa to give me some extra support, but on the latter model I didn't bother. I just stuck it on the front, on the back to give me the skids that I wanted. But so this is the FPV version. Like I said, this was the very first one I built. So I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you've got a bit more insight about actually building. So for the people who are actually building one as we speak, I hope that was helpful, and I hope that answered a lot of your questions. Thank you for watching Team Woolly Sheep Reviews. So go build one.